So this is an introduction to the overall Scrum process, so the components that make up the overall methodology, essentially. So we've talked previously about the concept of sprints and that is a time-boxed event. Now, within each sprint, regardless of the time length that you select as a team, whether that's 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, each sprint has the same fixed meetings at the same fixed times and the same roles within each cycle. So we have our 3 key roles: our product owner, our team, and our Scrum Master. So our product owner, who will essentially own the product vision and the customer requirements, and they will essentially generate what we call the product backlog. So those are the customer's requirements and essentially define what we are going to deliver and build. The team will be responsible for delivering and building the product. And then the Scrum Master, who is responsible for facilitating Scrum events and ensuring that there are no impediments to stop the team or the product owner from being able to deliver the product. So let's just say, for example, that we selected a 1-week sprint and that we would start that week with a sprint planning meeting, and that would be 2 hours long. And within that meeting, the product owner would present the product backlog. The team would select certain items from that product backlog to work on. They would define tasks from those items, and then they would also create some estimates so that there is some kind of shared understanding of what they can realistically deliver within that 1-week sprint. The next day, on the Tuesday, they would have a daily stand-up, or sometimes called also a daily scrum. And that's a 15-minute meeting where the team has a chance to assess whether they are gradually working towards achieving their sprint goal. So this always follows a standard format, and always you will ask what the person has done the day before, what the tasks they're going to do on that day, if there are any impediments to prevent them from achieving those tasks and the broader team goal. What that meeting is not designed for is detailed discussions around solutioning or missing requirements or other issues that the team may face. Those should be taken outside of that meeting. So we then have a daily stand-up on the Wednesday, but by the time we get to the Thursday, that's when we need to take what we call a backlog refinement meeting. And that's where we have an opportunity for the team and the product owner to discuss the other items that may be coming up for delivery and coming up for the team to start working on the next week within the product backlog, to ask any questions and to ensure that the product owner has all the requirements detail necessary in order that the team can then have an effective sprint planning meeting on the following Monday. On the Friday, that's the day when you would have your sprint review meeting followed by your sprint retrospective meeting. So the sprint review meeting is essentially a meeting for the team to be able to present the work they have done to the product owner and understand that this has met the customer expectations. That should be a flat meeting in terms of its structure, so you should not have a situation where one person is always leading and presenting and others are not making contributions. It should be that every team member is able to make some contribution to that meeting. Now, in the sprint retrospective, that meeting is essentially to ensure the team have an opportunity to understand what they could improve for the next sprint. So it might be that there are certain tools that need to be improved. It might be that the process or some requirements were missing and things need to be approached differently, and that meeting is essentially there to help the team assess that, become more efficient over time. So each sprint has standardized meetings which conform to time-boxed lengths and roles which stay the same for every iteration. So as I've mentioned, sprint meetings are always the same in each sprint. So if this is a 1-week sprint, always our sprint planning would be on a Monday for 2 hours. Our daily scrum or our daily stand-up would be 15 minutes on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. On our Thursday, our backlog refinement meeting would be no more than 1 hour. And on Friday, Our sprint review would be no more than 2 hours, and our retrospective would be no more than 1 hour. It's really important to keep to these strict time boxes in order to help drive efficiency of the team and the delivery. So within each sprint length, as soon as you double the sprint length, you also double the number of meeting hours. So for a 2-week sprint, you would have a sprint planning meeting of 4 hours, a sprint review meeting of 4 hours, and a sprint retrospective of 2 hours. For a 1-month sprint, a sprint planning meeting would be 8 hours, a sprint review meeting would be 8 hours, and a sprint retrospective would be 4 hours. I can honestly say from my own experience, 1-month sprints are very cumbersome, and taking a full day out of a team's time can be very disruptive. So I would generally recommend a 1 or 2 week sprint cycle if that's appropriate for your organisation. So that's essentially an overview of the methodology in summary and the different components that make up that methodology. Before we move on and look at some of these elements in more detail, I'm going to give you an opportunity to grab a coffee and take a break, and I'll see you in the next lesson.